spoilers. All right, welcome. Thanks for coming to my talk on networking. I feel like we're short on time, so I'm going to dive right in with a quick, who am I? Why do you want to listen to me? So my name is Gianluca Montaque. I am a game designer at an indie studio called Beta Jester. Thanks for the great intro. I'm also a co-founder of a new studio called Fribbly Games, where we're working on a mystery, narrative, point-and-click witchy adventure game. And I'm also a speaker. Alas, that's why I am here. But more importantly than all of that, I'm a student. I'm a student right now. I'm a third-year game design student at the University of the Arts London. I wrote my thesis draft about 2 weeks ago. And before I was a student, I had no access to the games industry. I was working in marketing. I was just vibing, living my life. And I realized I woke up one day and I was like, this ain't for me. I'm not made to be a marketer. I'm made to do something else. I want to chase a dream. I want to go into games. So I went to uni, decided chase a dream. And then a few months later, I started volunteering for Game Dev London, which was mentioned earlier as well. And then months after that, I started working part-time, paid job in games. Nice, that's the dream, that's the goal. But the question is, how did I go from working at Game Dev London to getting an actual job? How did I go from UAL to working at Game Dev London? And if you read the title of the talk, then you got the spoilers. The answer is absolutely networking, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about. So now that I've run through kind of why I'm here talking to you about this specific thing, we can get on to the actual nitty-gritty, the juice, the big H question, oh wait, whoops, I just skipped a bit. So what I think we should probably do first is go through some actual networking fundamentals before I get into where the real value is in this talk from my perspective. So some of you might not have been used to or explored networking as an idea before, so let's cover that first, and then we'll get into the bit that I think is the best part. So first things first, your fundamentals, the big W questions, who, what, when, where, and why, starting off with what I mean by networking. When I say networking, I mean going out, speaking to people within an industry you're interested in, with it, whatever it might be, whether it's games or not, and building those connections to further your future career path. And often they will be anyone from industry professionals of every experience level. So outside of that, why would you even want to network at all? I'm living proof of why you want to network at all. I'm a student who had no access to games, and in a year and a half, I had a paid games job. Really, it's about getting into an industry that's really tough to get into. Networking can do a lot of work for you. Beyond that, when should you start? The answer is right now. The sooner the better. Networking is not a do it once and you're done job. It's slow incremental progress, building up over time. And I'll get on to some of the reason why that is in a moment. In terms of who you actually want to be speaking to in the first place, that is another big general answer, which is pretty much anybody. The industry is large. In the UK, it actually feels quite tight-knit when you start going to events, but people of every experience level can provide value for you. They might be the person who reposts that LinkedIn job ad that you wouldn't have seen. They might be the person who puts your name in a hat in a meeting at the company they work at without realizing it. They don't have to be the decision maker who will be the person who will say, yes, I'd like to hire this person, or yes, I think that they can come on board in some capacity. And equally, where do you want to be doing this? There are loads of places to network, and most of the time people will say, go to games industry events like EGX, like WASD, like Develop Brighton, and those are really big titles, but I really want to recommend trying to look at the smaller communities and organizations in games that have really niche focuses. In particular, like POC in Play, these organizations have really focused demographics, and they care, they have like a personal investment in supporting that group. If you belong to a specific group, your best evangelists to help you get into the industry, to help support you breaking in, will be the people in that group that you belong with, and you will find an organization that you connect with. I promise you, there's loads of them. And I've got more at the end, on the quick thank you slide at the end, so don't worry, there will be more. But now that we've cracked the fundamentals, we can get to the juice, to the nitty-gritty, and ask the big H question of how do I actually do the networking bit? Now that we've talked about why, about when, about where, about what we want to be doing, how do I actually do it well? So introducing my personal top 4 tips on networking successfully, how I managed to do it and get to where I am now. And I want to preface, disclaimer, these are my tips. People have lots of different approaches to networking. Everyone likes to do things differently, and I'm not trying to say everyone else is wrong and I am right. But this is what I found worked for me. So here are my top 4 tips, starting with number 1, which is to change your goals. And by this I mean, a lot of the time, I think that people enter networking conversations where they're speaking to somebody new, and they approach it with how can you help me and my career? And I'm sure that most of you will be able to relate to this, but when somebody comes and speaks to you with an agenda, you can tell. You can tell that they're there to talk to you for a reason and not just to talk to you. And that comes across badly. I think it makes much more sense to shift your goal from how can you help me to how can we have a nice, great social interaction? How can you go away from this conversation thinking, damn, they were great. They were a nice person. Because that is the foundation for where your opportunities will come from. Nobody is going to hire you, employ you, recommend you before they like you. And so it makes sense for your goal to be the liking you part before the employ you part. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, being consistent. And by this I mean, don't stop going to events after you've done it once. The best relationships I've built in the industry have come from repeated social interactions. I go to one event, I see that person for the first time, I go, yo, my name's Gianluca, how are you doing? We have a great social interaction. But we're not friends yet. They don't know me personally yet. But I go to another event, I see them again. And we have the same nice social interaction. I ask about something that they mentioned last time to prove that I was listening, to prove that I was engaged in the conversation. And then I do it again and again and again. And those are the connections that will really vouch for you, because they know you. And that is the goal. Tip number 3, talk less. And I want to preface this by saying you still need to sell yourself to some extent. You still need to talk about you. But this is more of a communication point in general. If our overall goal is being ultimately likable, then the best way to do that is to listen more and ask probing questions. Ask about what somebody else is interested in. And the reason I say that is because people love talking about themselves. And they love talking about themselves because that's where they're most comfortable. It's really easy to talk about my passions, about what I'm doing, about my work, because I know all about it. I don't need to make any guesses. I feel really comfortable doing that. And people who listen to me, I'm more likely to say they were nice to talk to because I had a great time. That's the nuts and bolts of it. Secret technique I put at the bottom there, which I mentioned earlier, which is callbacks. Callbacks are dreamy. Callbacks are perfect. The moment you prove to somebody that you were listening at the start of the conversation, they realize, wow, this person was actually engaged with what I was doing, and you come across really, really well. And point number 4, which is be friendly, don't be friends. And I think this is a fine line that people sometimes accidentally cross when they're trying to be likable, which is oversharing personal facets of your life. It's very easy to think that talking about intimate details of your life is a good way to get somebody else to open up, but usually it's a bit kind of makes people uncomfortable rather than making people open to you. And you've got to remember that regardless of where you're at, whether it's in a bar, in a conference hall, whatever it is, networking is still a professional activity, and you're in a professional setting. And you might become friends with somebody later on, but when you're on first, second, third meeting with them, they're not ready to hear about really tough things, and they don't want to tell you about really tough things. So don't ask questions that are a bit too probing. To summarize, because I've gone very, very fast, I know about that. Changing your goals, as in focusing on the quality of your social interaction, not on whether somebody can help you on a career path, because they'll only help you once they like you. Being consistent, keep going, keep on continuing going to events, talk to the same people again and again and again. No, don't bother them, but talk to them again and again and again. Talking less and listening more. Obviously, talk about yourself and about what you can bring to the table, but encourage other people to talk about what they love, because that's the best way to get them to resonate with you and really think that you're sound, basically. And number 4, be friendly, don't be friends. Just know where the line is on the social scale when it comes to professionalism and friendliness. And that is that. Thank you for listening. Here's some industry events. Here's some other organizations. I'll be around anyway to talk about stuff if anyone has questions on this. That was a whirlwind.